There is one more thing I want to look at inside this battery while I've got it taken apart, and it required actually pulling the relays off the bottom board where they're mounted as well, again with that foam tape. But the thing I want to do is I want to actually pull this connector down here with the assortment of rainbow colors of wires. That's the balance connector. That has a lead for each of the cells that's in this pack. And so I want to check the balance and find out if there's any cells that are low and may not be contributing, to a full charge. So. Okay, so here's my meter for measuring cell balance, and it'll also actually try to balance the cells, although very slowly. And then I've got a number of leads set up here for connecting to the battery just for this purpose. One thing about these NOCOs, the way that they set up these balance leads is you've got 2 reds at one end and 2 blacks at the other end. Those are your positive and negative. And I suppose that's so that they can put more current through those for balancing. But in any case, treat the 2 reds at one end and the 2 blacks at the other end as one wire. And that's why I can't just plug this connector straight into my cell balancer. But you'll have black, black, that's the most negative, and then this green, blue, yellow, and then red, red, which is the most positive. So we'll start by connecting the most negative. And I can choose either black wire here. Next is this one, which goes to the next more positive wire. A little difficult with this camera in the way. Okay, and now on to the next more positive wire. At this point, my meter is turned on. It looks like it needs a couple cells connected for its own power. Next, we'll go to the next cell. Okay, quite a difference there. And finally, the last cell. This is what I wanted to check for. And this can happen when your batteries get deeply discharged. You get into this situation where the cell balance can get quite a ways off. So we're actually seeing a full volt of difference between these cells, which is not great. We got 3.46 for the first cell, 3.52 for the second, then 2.52 for the third, and 3.44 for the fourth. So really what it comes down to is, yeah, there's a bit of imbalance between the 3 that are charged up higher, but mainly it's this third cell that is down at a full volt lower than the others. So there's a couple options here. I can switch to using my hobby charger and set it up for balance charging, and it'll charge up this whole battery and balance along the way. That will be very, very, very slow because the hobby charger will basically have to hold down 3 cells while it charges up the 1 cell. What actually may be a lot quicker is just directly charging this low cell up to the level that's approximately the same as the others. What I'm going to do is just connect this up to the low cell. So that should be between the blue and yellow wires here. So now they are kind of misaligned so that they can't actually touch each other. And on the meter here, that's on the power supply, I see 2.53 volts. On this meter, which is showing the balance of all the cells, I see all the cells, including the one that's 2.51, 2.52, they're close. These don't exactly agree. And then the other 3, which are closer to about 3.46, seems like what they're at. So I'm going to set my power supply to 3.46. In fact, I'll just go all the way to 3.5. And I'll set the current at, what can these jumpers take? I mean, half an amp should be safe. Let's see what it does with, half an amp on there. Should be okay. So I turn that on, and you can see the cell voltage coming up. So we are at 3.26 volts. On the low cell, the highest one is now 3.47. And pretty soon here, I think I'll have to switch to actually charging the sucker up and then continuing to balance as it's charged up. For that, I could use my hobby charger. That might be the way to go because it'll take the same connector. And then I'll also have to add some more connectors to go straight to the batteries. But let's give it a little bit more time to balance out under this method, and in the meantime I'll get my hobby charger ready. Great. So what I use is this Tenergy brand hobby charger. It can do up to 6S batteries. So I will set this up as the balance leads, and then it takes banana plugs for the actual positive and negative that the significant amount of the charge goes through. All right, so now I can connect the positive and negative main leads just like I have been up until now. That is, I'm going to connect the positive to the regular jump clamp. So there's positive, and then negative needs to go straight to the battery. That's here. Okay, so what I can do here is go to lithium ion balance, and got it set for 4S, that's right, and 2 amps. So I'm going to hold this down, battery check for serial, sure enough, and it's going to start ramping up that charge. So we're at 2 amps, and it's charging up the overall battery pack, and then here is a view of the individual cells. So let me see if I can zoom in. Yeah, so you can see here that the first cell, 3.5, second 3.5, third one is 3.1, and then the third one I think was close to 3.5 as well. The way this works is it charges and then it turns off so that it can take a battery reading, and then it charges again. So yeah, the third cell definitely lower than the others. So after a few hours on the Tenergy hobby charger in balance mode, I see that the charge is listed as being full, up to 16.4 volts. That's 4.1 volts per cell. And you can see the final voltages are all pretty close here. And that's typical. They'll vary by maybe 1/100 of a volt when it's all done. So with balancing done, now what I want to do is disconnect all this stuff and hook it up to the USB-C input again, charge this battery pack up to the level that the BMS wants to charge it to in case it isn't all the way up at that level yet, and then I'll rerun the capacity test. There we go. So charging off the Apple laptop charger again, and we are charging up a little bit, so it's at 50 watts and dropping. So I think it'll probably charge fairly briefly here up to a full level, and then I'll connect it up to the load tester again. Okay, so fully charged and fully balanced. Disconnect the charger, and I will plug in my load tester again here. Okay, positive to the clamp and negative direct to the battery. I'm gonna actually turn the current up to 1 amp again, which is what I used in the previous test, and we'll see if the overall capacity is any higher. Okay, we're set to 1 amp. I'll let this run until it cuts off at the 11.5 volt level. At 11.5 volt cutoff, looks like we got 40 watt hours this round. So 40 watt hours, 2.74 amp hours. Now let's see what the balance of the cells is when the overall pack is down at 11.5 volts. Okay, here's the moment of truth. I've got my cell balance leads hooked up into the NOCO again. I'm going to plug the other end into my individual cell balance monitor. And yeah, that's what I was concerned about. I'll zoom you guys in. You can see that that third cell is still low. It's down at 2 volts, whereas the other 3 cells are up at 3.5 volts. So that's unfortunate. That means that cells 1, 2, and 4 actually still have more energy to give, whereas a cell that's down at 2 volts is well below any typical cutoff voltage. So you'll recall that on the way up, as I was charging this, I found that 11.5 volts was where the BMS started allowing this battery pack to be charged. And so I chose 11.5 volts for the discharge cutoff as well, so I could measure capacity. Now that I'm looking at this and seeing that an 11.5 volt charge of the overall battery pack corresponds to 2 volts on the third cell, that tells me that really 11.5 volts probably isn't important. It's probably more significant that 2 volts is a cutoff or a cut on, if you will. You probably have to be showing at least 2 volts on every cell in order for the BMS to allow charge into the overall battery pack. I can still balance charge it up to full, and it may jumpstart a car, but I have a feeling that over the next discharge and recharge cycle that third cell will fall quite a bit below the others again and will be degraded further with every charge cycle. So unfortunately, this wasn't the success I was hoping for, but I did learn quite a lot about this battery pack, how it charges, how it's configured, and how you can test out and monitor what's going on by hooking up to it different ways. So hopefully this was still helpful to others that are looking to test out, understand, and hopefully revive their NOCO Boost battery packs. Thanks for watching, and if you're at all inclined, go ahead and hit that like button. I'd sure appreciate it.